Okay, thank you everyone for showing up to the meeting tonight. We have an election tomorrow, so we are having our meeting here because we had a set up for the election that's going to happen tomorrow, so it's less confusing, and there's more room in here anyway. I know that a lot of folks are interested in what
Hey Laura, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so if we have questions, do we chat it to you or?
Folks, we're gonna need you to hold off for a moment while we get the meeting up and running. There will be a question and answer time. I'm just gonna go ahead and mute all of you at the moment.
At this time, I'd ask, is there any agenda additions or deletions? Not hearing any. I would ask for a motion on the emergency site visit minutes on July 23rd. Is there a motion for acceptance?
I'm just gonna make a note, I was not a part of the emergency site visit, so I'm gonna recuse myself from those minutes.
Same here, Mr. Chairman. I was not there.
Okay, you wanna,
That was the one up in the cemetery.
yeah,
I'll make a motion to accept the emergency site visit meeting on July 23rd at the Chip and Hook Cemetery.
Oh, that, okay, yes, so I second it, I was there, yes, I'll second that.
One or
Sorry.
all right, and a motion made and it's been seconded. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And that was, just so the public understands, we had A&R come down and look at some wetlands issues up in the cemetery, and it looks like it was a good meeting and we got things squared away, I think. I look for a motion for the July 27th meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Is there any corrections or deletions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Let's, as soon as we had those folks, let's,
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we actually go out of order and switch now to the Kingsley Covered Bridge topic of our agenda.
there's second.
Second that.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, Rob. This way we can get those folks in and out, kinda.
Okay, so we'll invite V-Trans at this time to make their presentation. Again, other participants on Zoom, please remain muted while the presentation is going on. If there are questions that are not answered, we also have a full room down here as well. We'll try to be orderly about taking questions once the presentation is over.
Thank you. So I'm only going to talk for 30 seconds here to introduce Hoyle Tanner and Associates. So we have Joseph Bikia from Hoyle Tanner. We also have Sean James. They have extensive experience in the rehabilitation of covered bridge projects. We also have Kyle Obenauer on the line. He's from the V-Trans Rehabilitation Options. And Joseph, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it. Can you all see my screen? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. So, thank you for having us for the meeting tonight. This is the first meeting that we scheduled with the town for the local concern meeting. We are early on the design stages of the project, and we wanted to come to the select board and also to the town's abutters to the project to let them know about the project, what the project is all about, and then gather your input tonight. We don't have any solutions to present to you tonight. This is a local concern meeting. We're going to tell you a little bit about the project, and then the goal of the presentation tonight is to gather as much input from the public as possible. I'm Joseph Pica with Hoyle Tierney Associates. I'm the project manager for our firm. We were retained by Vermont Agency of Transportation to design the rehabilitation of the project under a retainer contract. With me on the other line is Sean James. He's the principal in charge. If I get any hard questions, I'll let him answer those questions. But he has extensive cover bridge experience. He's done over 40 cover bridge rehabilitation projects, and most of them have been in Vermont. So the outline of the presentation is shown on this slide. We first want to talk about the project purpose and needs. I know you all know where the project is located, but I assume this presentation is going to get posted on the website. So I wanted to be complete and also show a project location and show the location of the project. And then we'll get into inspection findings. Back in June, we did a detailed inspection of the cover bridge. We were there for a couple days. We did an inspection of the roof, of the truss members, the floor members. You may remember that the bridge was closed during that time on the second week of June. So we're going to show you a lot of photos tonight to show you what we found. And then we're going to tell you about the process that we're going through to complete the design. And then eventually we're going to get into construction. We'll tell you the anticipated schedule. And then on the very end, if you could be patient with us, if you could listen to the whole presentation and then ask any questions towards the end of the presentation and any other feedback that you may have. So the project purpose is to evaluate the rehabilitation of the Kingsley cover bridge for continued use over the Miller River, and then also to extend the service life. The need for the project is to provide access, to continue to provide access for vehicles across Mill River in the eastern part of the town of Clarendon. Project location, the project is located near the airport. It spans Mill River. You all know where the project is located, but like I mentioned, I'm showing a location map here just for completeness, so if the presentation gets posted on the town website, everyone knows what project we're talking about. Just a brief background about the cover bridge. It was originally constructed in 1836, and then it was rehabilitated in 1949 and 1987. Those are the two last major rehabilitations that were done. I'm sure there were some other work that was done at the cover bridge along the way, but those are the ones that we have plans on record and we have a pretty good idea as to what was done at that time. The bridge was listed in the National Register of Historic Places in 1974. It's a tall lattice truss. There are two trusses, each 120 feet long from portal to portal. They're spaced at just under 16 feet on center, and then they provide a vertical clearance above the deck surface of about 11 feet maximum. It's actually the less on the edge of the covered bridge where we have the portals. It's as low as 9 feet. The bridge is posted for a weight limit of 3 tons. The substructures or abutments are reinforced concrete abutments founded on bedrock. And it's quite an elevation difference from the top of the roadway surface down to the bottom of the channel. I think it's in order of over 30 feet from the top of the road to the bottom of the channel. So those abutments, at least one of the abutments, the north abutment, is pretty tall. And it's definitely founded on very good, competent bedrock into the channel. And there's no scour concern whatsoever. This sketch I took from the 1987 plans, and you can see the elevation of the bridge. It's partially stone with the truss, partially stone with the floor system and the siding, just to show you the different structural components. And then the bottom of the channel to the bottom of the bridge, as I mentioned, is over 30 feet, so it's quite an entrenched channel where the Mill River crosses the bridge. And then we have the cross section. We have the two trusses, the two tile lattice trusses. We have the bracing between the trusses, the floor system, and then the trusses are spaced at 15 foot 7 inches. As as I mentioned earlier, we did the inspection back in June, and we used the National Bridge Inspection Standards. That way we all communicating on the same verbiage, on the same terminology. So we use a scale from 0 to 9, with 0 being failed or closed condition, and 9 being the excellent condition. So for each component of the bridge, we assign a rating anywhere from 0 to 9. So for the deck, we provided a condition rating of 7, or in other words, it's a good condition on the scale of 0 to 9. So you're pretty close to 9 on the deck condition. Superstructure, not so much. It's halfway between failed and excellent. So it's on the scale of 0 to 9, it's a 5 or a fail. So the superstructure definitely needs some work that needs to happen. Substructure, it's in 7. So similar to the deck, you have it in good condition. And then the actual condition of the channel where the water passes, it's a rate. It's a rating that's 8 because it's a fairly entrained channel. We have bedrock on the bottom, and there's no concern for scouring of the existing substructure units. So for the next few slides, I'm going to show you a lot of photos. I'm going to show you some of the deficiencies that we found. And then we're going to continue with the process as to what process we have to follow for the project. So starting from the top, we have the metal roof. The one thing that we noticed, we put the ladder against the portal, and then we looked into how the ridge cap was connected to the roof, and you can see the photo on the left-hand corner here, on the upper left-hand corner, you can see a screw that's attaching the ridge beam to the roof. Not normally done that way. Usually the connectors are concealed underneath the ridge cap. And you're not supposed to attach the ridge cap this way. And in some other cases that had nails, a series of nails on the ridge cap. So that's a place where rainwater, storm water is going to get into that connection between the nail and the screw and the ridge cap, and then it's going to make its way into the members down below the roof. So there's definitely some issues with the ridge cap that needs to get addressed. The paint on the roof, it's a little bit weird. You have sections of the roof that it looks like they maybe were recently replaced and they're in really good condition, as shown on the photo. On the lower left-hand corner, you see the right side of the roof is green, and then the other left side of the roof is not so much green. The paint has faded away, has worn off. So I'm not sure when the repairs were done or what sections of the roof were done and when, but there's definitely a section of the roof that needs some attention because the painting has come off. We got some blistering of the paint on other areas, and then you also have the issues with the connection of the ridge cap to the metal roof with either the screw or the nails. The other big issue that we saw on the top, we had a drone during our inspection, so we flew the drone over the bridge, and then we could see that on both ends, on the north and the south end of the bridge, this is the north end here, you can see that the trees are overgrowing over the roof. So that's a hazard for the roof, it's a hazard for the bridge. It's also could explain some of the issues that we see as we're going to talk more about insect damage that we have on the bridge. It's a lot easier for the ants and another insect to get from the trees to the roof and then down below into the bridge itself. So we definitely need to do something about clearing and all that vegetation and not have it overgrown and over the roof. And the other photo that I wanted to talk a little bit is the photo on the lower right-hand corner. You can see the south end of the bridge, and you can see that a quarter of the bridge is completely overgrown by the trees, and it doesn't see any sunlight. So that's definitely an issue that needs to get addressed with the roof. Underneath the roof, we got the roof boards. So the photo on the upper left-hand corner, you can see the roof board to the roof rafter. You can see some of the splitting and some of the breaks on that roof board. The photo adjacent to it, it shows the two knee braces connected together. The one on the right, the workers that did the previous repair probably went a little bit too much to cut that. Remember, there was no need to cut all that notch there to make that connection there. So that definitely weakens the strength of the bracing system when you go ahead and you overcut those timber members the way that they were overcut. So there's something that needs to get done there, and we need to address it. We also have some breaks on the roof rafters. On the lower left-hand corner of the photo here, you can see the roof rafter is broken. A huge split down to the bottom, and it's working towards the roof borders. The last photo on the lower right-hand corner, you can see part of the cross beam and the roof rafters where they connect together. It's completely rotted. You can't miss it. If you're inside the bridge and if you're looking up, this is one of the cross beams near the south end of the bridge where almost 100% of that cross beam is completely rotted from dry rot and also from insect damage.
That's what we were looking at, right?
It's a lot of guide wire to keep the bridge straight and also from the wind so it doesn't overturn. But the problem with the guide wire is that it's not well attached. Some of them are attached to dead trees, some of them are attached into trunks, trees that were cut and the trunk was left over. So they partially protected. They don't do as much as they were intended to, but definitely we should look into either strengthening the connection system or more preferably removing it. So we are in the process of investigating what kind of bracing system we need to add to the covered bridge or strengthen the existing bracing system in order to eliminate the guide wire. It's also obvious when you come here to visit the covered bridge and you take pictures and you see those guide wires on the side, no one wants to see them. So we're going to make an effort to definitely try to eliminate them in a safe and manner that we're not going to compromise the safety of the bridge. Lattice members that connect the upper cord to the bottom cord, there's some issues with the lattice members. When the last major rehabilitation project was done in 1987, they replaced almost 90% of the lattice members on the lower part. So the photo on the lower upper right-hand corner, you could see what I was explaining, that you got old timber and then you have new timber that were spliced together with bolts. And then you can see a gap as shown on the casing photo on the left. And that gap is as much as 1.25 inches that we measured. That gap is a lot larger on the end of the bridge, and as you work closer to the bridge, the gap closes up because there's less forces as you walk towards the middle of the bridge. My guess is that at some point the bridge was overloaded, maybe an oversized or overweight vehicle crossed the bridge and caused this deformation into the bolts and into that whole splice connection, and that's why we see that gap there. So we definitely need to pay some attention to that, and we need to make sure that that's safe for many years to come. Some other deficiencies that we found some splits on the ladders. On the photo on the lower left-hand corner, you can see a split right down to the ladders. The adjacent photo right next to it, this is the top of the ladders on the top board near the roof. You can see that smaller portion of the ladders here that I'm pointing to used to be connected to the other portion, and you can see it's quite a gap. It's almost 4 or 5 inches gap where the ladders split. So there's definitely some issues with the lattice members. On the top board, the photo on the right side, on the southwestern quadrant, there's some bracking that's going on. The bridge is not completely plumb because some of the bedding timber is underneath that's rotted. So as the timber has rotted, the bridge has settled on one side and it's caused this bracking when you notice. So for 12 inches, the height of the top board, we were measuring about 3/4 of an inch out of plumb. And that's quite a bit because we have the deficiency down below where the bedding timber has rotted and then the bridge is settling uneven. This didn't happen overnight. This has happened for quite some time. And then the bridge is slowly trying to get out of shape and wrapped. So there's definitely something that we need to address as part of the rehabilitation. The other big concern with the top board is the hidden rot. On some locations on the photo on the upper left-hand corner, you can see the channels are missing or rotted. You can see all that dry rot or insect damage. It's obvious, and you can definitely see it. But there's many other locations when you don't even see it visually. You have to go around and you have to keep looking to find it. And that's what I'm showing on the photo on the lower left-hand corner. It's a 6-inch long ice pick. And as we look in between the two plies of the cord, that ice pick went right in, at least 6 inches in, and that was not visible to any of us, but by looking into those joints, we were able to find a lot of locations where you have that condition, where you have the dry rot between the two members. The bottom board is in really good condition. It was replaced in 1987. The one thing that was done out of the norm was the bolted connection. Everywhere else on the bridge we have the trowel connections or the tree nails in another way to say it. But on the bottom board, the members were fastened with 4 2-inch bolts. When the bolts were replaced back in 87, they were galvanized bolts, but you could see on some of the photos that I'm showing here is that there's a lot of rusting that's going on. So the reason for that is not that galvanizing failed prematurely. It's actually the treatment that was used into the timber. We suspect that the treatment used on the bottom board was the copper captain, CCA, the copper chromium preservative, and that preservative is really corrosive to the steel. Even if it's galvanized, it creates a lot of corrosion, and that's what we see here. So definitely need to do something about those connections, and we definitely need to address the rusting that's going on, because if you leave it like that, it's going to continue, it's going to worsen. The other issue that I mentioned earlier is the bedding timbers. The photo on the right lower hand corner, where I'm pointing to, that's a bedding timber that started to rot, and it's not rotted uniformly across the whole width. It's only rotted in one corner, which is causing the whole truss to lean and rack. And that's what I'm showing on the photo on the left, where you have that almost 3-inch gap between the bottom board and the floor beam, where the truss has settled, but the floor beam is cantilevered or is suspended by the floor decks, because the floor decks are really attached to the floor beams, and that floor beam is just hanging there, it's not even supported.
Did we lose him? Technology's great when it works.
I could do all this on Wednesday with the veterans. Yeah, starting at 9
Zoom?
o'clock. 9 o'clock and it's over at 3 o'clock. Put a break for lunch.
I'm not more of that bridge than what you and I were there with the state boys.
There we go.
I'm not an engineer, not a man.
Well, the best part of it is where they redid the deck not long ago.
Yeah,
And that's the only thing that's really good.
yeah.
Did Bob, when you did that, did you go underneath too? When you walked over that, did you go underneath too?
Yeah.
Yeah. See that one big chunk of rot on the west side of it?
Oh, yeah.
But you can see the damage when you have overweight vehicles crossing that.
Oh, yeah. A lot of traffic over there.
You know, I don't think that's.
What'd you say?
Conservation.
I might need one, I don't know.
I disagree.
You think
I
it's
think
for
s-
expansion?
Daily Library's got full bars and it kicked me off for some reason.
That's all
That's what everybody uses up here, right, Matt?
makes sense.
Yeah, it could.
Unless somebody kicked the router off downstairs.
If it was overweighted and it stretched, you'd saw them bolts. Split, you'd see splits in that wood.
Yeah, it is not like in,
Like I told Bob, I'm not an engineer.
Don't get the big bucks, right?
okay.
Hey, Rob, while you're doing that, how about if we go on to another,
Yeah, you can quickly. I'm gonna be back up and running here hopefully in just a minute.
yeah, as soon as we can give a road commissioner give a report, go ahead.
Just a short report, just to give you a heads up. Started mowing on the east side of town. We still have a little bit left on west side of town to mow. I can't remember if I reported last meeting we had, but we,
So, in a nutshell, it's anywhere between 3 tons to 20 tons, but we anticipate that we're going to be on the lower end of the scale. It may not be feasible to rehabilitate the structure for all the way up to 20 tons without major
Joseph?
repair.
Joseph,
Yes.
if I can interrupt you for a minute, we lost you about 5 minutes ago here at the main meeting. The slide you were on was the picture of the major support member underneath that was rotting away, sideways. Yep, that's where we lost
This
you.
one.
Yep, that's where we lost you.
So what I was explaining through was the block that we had on the bending timbers, which is creating uneven support surface for the bottom chord of the southwestern quadrant of the bridge, which is causing some of the racking on the picture that I showed you earlier with the level where we had it up a plumb by 3/4 of an inch. That's what's causing that racking into the bridge. And then the photo on the left, you can see the gap that's creating from the bottom chord to the floor beam by as much as 3 inches. And that floor beam is essentially supported by the deck now, by the nail penetrating deck. I was talking about the runners. They trap debris. They also have a safety hazard. If you're traveling over the runners, you're doing great, but if you're off track and if you get off the runners, it's very hard to get back on them. So if there's a vehicle that does that, you could potentially impact some of the structural members, and there's no curbing to prevent the vehicle from hitting the truss. So we're definitely gonna look into the runners and make the recommendations to do them full width and not have them two lines of runners. And then we also gonna look at potentially adding some kind of a curbing to prevent any vehicles from hitting the structural members of the truss. Because we saw a lot of evidence down below into the bottom chord where the tunnels were hit by, I don't know, maybe certain vehicles, the tunnel head was broken in many locations. So again, the only real deficiency on the floor system is the runners. The floor beams are in really good condition. The deck is in really good condition. They've been in service for 33 years, but they're definitely working really well for the town, for the capacity that they have the bridge posted for. The abutments are in pretty good condition. There's some deficiencies. We have some concrete falling, some cracking. We have some exposed rebar. that all can be fixed. The only challenge is the access, trying to get the equipment and personnel from the contractor to get them down below into the chain of 35 feet. You got no really easy access to get anyone there, so that's a challenge, and that's what's going to drive the cost up for the substructure repairs, because the repairs are not that terrible, it's just access to get to it. And then I mentioned the rehabilitation options that we're going to look at. We've seen the bridge, we have a pretty good idea as to how the condition of the bridge is right now and how much service life we have, we're going to estimate it. But we definitely want to extend the service life, because if the bridge is left as is, you're going to see an exponential loss on the strength of some members if you do not do anything to it in the near future. So some of the rehabilitation options are definitely going to look into extending the service life and also increasing the capacity anywhere between 3 tons to 20 tons. And I had a brief discussion with one of the selectmen. I think when we were doing inspection, he came over and I explained to him all those different options that we're looking at. And I will explain it again that the 20 ton could be alarming to the town. You could say that there's no possible way that you're going to be able to fit a 20 ton vehicle into the bridge. But just because we designed a bridge for 20 tons doesn't mean that you need to post it for 20 tons, you're going to have some reserve capacity. So say we design it for 20 tons, you could post it down to 3 tons, and then you know you have the reserve capacity should you ever have a need to use it if you have an emergency response vehicle that needs to cross the bridge at that time. So we're not sure where we're going to be in here. My guess is that we're going to be on the lower end of the scale, between 3 and 12. In order to bring the capacity all the way up to 20 tons, it's going to be substantial cost, and it's going to be substantial rehabilitation and replacement of the truss members in order to get it up to 20 tons. So those are the options that we're looking at, because at this point we don't know how much more money it's going to take to rehab it from 3 to 12 or from 3 to 20. If it's a small differential, then it may make sense to bring it all the way up to 20 tons. But that's what we're going to look into. Then we also want to hear from the town as to what their needs are. What do you see for regular use on the structure? Right now it's posted for 3 tons. Do you anticipate continuing the same use for 3 tons, or do you want to have maybe a little more reserve capacity into that should you ever be needed? So as part of the rehabilitation alternative analysis that we're doing, we're going to provide costs for each one of those options. We're going to make sure that the bridge is safe for each and single one of those options. We're going to look at environmental impacts, property impacts, and definitely one of the big reasons is to extend the service life of the bridge. And then as part of this meeting, we want to hear your concern, anything that the public has for concern, and any feedback that you could provide us that would help us to design a better project. Some of the traffic control alternatives that we're going to look are not feasible. The first one is phase construction, meaning that you do have to work in the time. So you do have to work, and then you shift the traffic on one side of the bridge, and then you complete the other half. This is not feasible on the covered bridge projects because we have a very limited lane. We only have 14 feet, so it's no feasible way to phase it. So that option is not even considered. Temporary bridge, you could definitely do the bridge either upstream or downstream, but it's going to be pretty costly. You're also going to have a lot of environmental and property impacts to adjacent abutters. So we've kind of discounted that option. So what we're leaning towards is the bridge closure with an offside detour. And on the next slide, I'm showing a map, a Google map as to how the detour we're proposing. So from East Street to Gorge Road to Vermont State Route 7B, and then to Bump Road, and then back to East Road. That detour is fairly short, it's just under 4 miles. So we'd like to hear your input from the fire chief, from emergency response vehicles, from ambulances, anything that you have in mind if you have any concern with this detour or if we should do something different. As part of the project, we have to follow the Section 106 National Historic Preservation Act requirements. We have to coordinate regarding cultural resources, including historic properties, which are two of the projects like Kingsley Mill and then the Kingsley Cover Bridge. We're going to look into archaeological sensitive areas. At this point, we don't believe there are any within the project limits. And then we also going to coordinate with the State Historic Preservation Office, and also in the upcoming month or so, we're going to have a presentation with Historic Cover Bridge Preservation Committee from V-Trains to gather their input and also to get their buy-in into how the rehabilitation measures that we're going to recommend are taken by them, and if they have any feedback or if we should change anything. This is part of the process, nothing out of ordinary. We've done this all the time, so it's just going through and checking all the boxes and making sure everyone is informed, including the public. We also going to check for natural resources if we have any rare or endangered species. We also going to try to minimize the impacts to nearby waters. Right now, we don't anticipate any takings. We most likely going to need some temporary easements for most of the construction access, but those should be fairly minimal. Nothing too big that's going to cause any adverse effect to the nearby properties. So what we would like to hear from you tonight is any concerns that you have, any usage that you have on the bridge that would like to know, any local events that we should avoid during construction, any safety concerns. I mentioned a couple. I mentioned the one about the runner boards. If you get off the runner boards, you most likely going to hit one of the structural members, so we'd like to fix that. And then any other concerns that you have that we would like to hear, so we can make sure that we incorporate that into our design. So for us, the next step is to look at all the alternatives that I mentioned. We're going to look into more detail as to what it's going to take to rehab the structure, anywhere between 3 tons to 20 tons. We're going to provide a cost. We also have 2 more presentations coming up. We have one with Historic Cover Bridge Preservation Committee, and then we'll come back in a month or so back to the town to give you the recommended alternative, and then also to get the buy-in from you on that, and make sure that we've addressed all the concerns that you have at this time. And then, as part of that process, we also want to complete NEPA, which is the National Environmental Policy Act. So we're going to, as part of that, we need to make sure that we get the environmental permitting. And then, this is all part of the scoping report, which we'll complete in the next few months. And then after that's approved by V-Trains in town, we're going to continue with contract plans and documents, and eventually get the project in construction. So this is the anticipated schedule. We're going to complete the scoping report in the next few months by fall of 2020. And then we have a couple of years to complete contract plans according to the schedule that V-Trains has given us. But there's always an opportunity to accelerate the schedule should the funds become available before the summer of 2023 for construction. So that's all I had for presentation. I've done enough talking, so I'd like to hear from all of you as to what concerns you have and any feedback that you can provide to us.
Okay, so I think the most organized way to do this, I'm going to pull up my screen so I can see everybody that I possibly can. Actually, Joseph, I could have you stop sharing your screen. That would also help. Perfect. Okay. So we're just going to flip-flop back and forth. If you are on Zoom, and make sure your camera's on. I'll start with a Zoom question, and I'll let a Zoom participant raise your hand and let me know that you would like to be recognized and offer something, and then we'll go to the room here, and we'll just go back and forth between Zoom and the room, and see what we might have for questions or comments regarding the points that Joseph has commented on and is looking for input on. So, is there a Zoom member that wants to be recognized to start with? Janine, I saw your hand first. you'll have to unmute yourself.
Got it. You good?
Yep, now we can hear you.
I have a question about taking away the ramps, which I understand, but I believe that might encourage the speeding, which a bunch of us just went before the town to capture the speed of 25 miles an hour, which is the hill coming out of the bridge. I understand that it's important to get away the runners, but I think it slows the people down. I want everyone to be safe. That would be my first question. My second question is the weight on the bridge. I think if we go to a higher weight, which doesn't have to be listed, the gentleman said, I have witnessed over the years and 30 some odd years being here, that there's been trucks, flatbeds, and a car that was just in an accident this past summer going over the bridge. So right there, you've got tonnage that's way above the three tons. So the weight and the runners would be my two questions. How to enforce, even though it might stay up on top, to slow the cars down and adhere to the weight limit.
Sure. So for ramps, we could definitely keep the ramps the way you had it, but in our eyes, we thought there was a safety concern when people come up to the bridge and they don't know that there's a ramp there. They usually tend to not know that there's a ramp, so they go over the bridge, and then you have the two runners with the space in between, and then if you get off track, if you get off the runners, there's the chance that you may hit the truss, and then we saw quite a few tunnels that have been hit. But if we address the runners to do full width and not the two lines of the runners, that's definitely going to help, and if that's what the town wants to do, I don't believe we have any concerns unless Laura has anything else to say about that. With the ramping.
I don't have any comments about the ramping, no. And in terms of enforcement, I would say that's up to the town. Generally, the town can reach out to DMV, but that's on the town to enforce that overweight vehicles aren't going over the bridge.
The other concern is that if we design rehabilitation for only 3 tons, you know that cars much heavier than 3 tons are going to go over, so they're going to cause a lot of damage to the structural components of the bridge. So you always want to have some reserve capacity in there into some of those members. You don't need to advertise it, but if you have a load posting that says 3 tons, everyone better follow that limit.
Okay. We're going to change over to the room here for somebody. Anybody got a question from the room? Or
I've
comment?
never been able to stop them from going through there. You can't have a cop there 24/7.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, when they were showing the supports that were separated, I think it was last winter, I called Mike. Bruno bought one of the new records, that great big damn thing. And his driver was going to take it up Night Road and show somebody. He goes through the bridge, I was in snow up over my knees, I was screaming at him. And he went up through, I ran up and called the state police. They told me call the sheriff. I called the sheriff, they didn't have nobody, they told me call the constable. I called him and he couldn't get there. I called the state police back. I can't tell you what I told the woman because he came back up and drove right back through the bridge. But then I called Mike, and Mike said that'll never happen again, and I think he took care of it.
Okay. So just, there was a comment on this end about overweight vehicles again and the dangers that they pose and the issues that there have been even last winter with vehicles. So, and that's something that the town is working on enforcement on. Back to Zoom, I think you're up in the corner for me. I think it's Mr. Hildebrandt. I'll let you unmute yourself and you can speak.
Sure. Just 2 comments. One, the runners, definitely agree, getting rid of those is needed. People oftentimes are walking across the bridge while a car is driving across the bridge, and the cars will try and go to the side, and they can get off the runners and then cause damage to the bridge. So full-length runner would be, I think, a huge benefit. The second thing on the weight, it would be really nice to have it rated for an ambulance, which I think is like 5 tons. You know, at 3 tons, that's not really an option. And if we're going to look at increasing the weight rating of the bridge, you know.
Oh, come on.
Uh-oh.
That's on his end, isn't it, Rob?
I think that's on his end, yeah, that's not us, we're good.
But it's not a major increase from what you stated.
Okay, we'll go back to the room here. Anybody else have a question or comment in the room?
I'd like to bring in a comment. You talked about the entrance of the bridge. I believe, if I'm following it correctly, what I saw over there is, are you talking about when you go onto the bridge, it lifts you up?
Yes.
Up on the thing, onto the rails. I personally would recommend a smooth transfer from the blacktop onto the bridge, because if you're actually standing at the bridge when a vehicle comes onto that bridge, that vehicle is actually bouncing on that bridge, creating more impact on the bridge.
So the concern that was brought up was just that the ramps, it's been witnessed that they can cause actual, like the vehicles, if they hit it too hard, to bounce on the bridge. And there's just speculation that that's actually more dangerous to the structure itself as a vehicle bounces when they hit those ramps too hard. So. Let's see, I saw a hand, looks like it's labeled Don's iPad.
Yeah, I just had 2 quick concerns that go regarding the detour. Basically, I found running the bump road is not maintained real well sometimes, and I don't have a truck or a Jeep. I'm concerned about the upkeep on that during the construction. And the other one was the map that you showed 7A and the end of the road, though, heading all the way down to the bump road, which it doesn't do. You'd have to, the traffic would have to cross Route 7 there. That could cause some issues. You might want to look into that before proceeding.
Okay.
So from a town perspective, I can tell you that there has already been discussion about, during the time of detour, the need for just preparations for more upkeep on Bump Road due to the higher traffic. So that's been discussed on the town selectmen side, just so everybody's aware of that. Back to the room, anybody else?
I just want to say, Rob, that I think that we should consider moving the load, the weight up to maybe 6 tons, but not advertising it. I think that's a good idea, because in the long term, that'll, in case somebody tries to get across there again, we're not damaging the bridge, because it really is built for, you know, a heavier weight vehicle.
So just for the record, that was a comment about believing that the specs for tonnage should go up, but possibly leaving the posting similar, as was mentioned during the presentation. Back to Zoom. Are there any more Zoom? Trying to make sure I can see everybody here. Anybody else here that would like to speak?
It looks like Don has the hand up. Don, did you have any other questions, or, okay?
Okay, and we are out of questions on our end here in the room as well, so I'm not sure if you folks have anything else you'd like to comment on to wrap us up with this portion of our meeting. Then we're gonna move on to our regular business.
So what's the consensus?
Oh, hold on. I had one last minute hand here, sorry. Yep.
Is it me or the gentleman behind? Okay, I've got a question. I love the bridge. lived there for 7 years. But honestly, with all the things that you're saying that need to be done, would it not be more feasible to run the numbers and set the bridge and do another bridge beside it, keep that as historical value, and put a bridge that can handle more weight and more of the traffic? That is a very high traffic road. You're going to go back at some point and you're going to have to close it again and do more work and more work. So why not bite the dust, keep the bridge, but have it as historical value and then build another bridge beside it for traffic?
So I'm not sure if that was heard over the Zoom call, but the comment, or the question I should say, is has it been looked at for there to be a current, a modern structure placed next to the bridge and leaving the current bridge as an historic landmark basically, and having something for modern traffic next to it?
Laura, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I can take that one, and I'll ask Kyle to sort of interject himself too as needed. In terms of cost to the town, so this is part of the town highway bridge program, and typically a town has a 10% share of cost. If a town decides to rehabilitate a structure, that goes down by 50% to a 5% share, and again down another 50% to a 2.5% share if the bridge is closed during construction. So there are stipulations. This is part of Act 153 of the 2012 legislative session. There are stipulations for bridges under the historic program that it's possible that there will be 0% share to the town. But if you do go forward with putting in a brand new structure, that is going to increase the cost of the town to the 10% share, full share. In terms of the historic permitting piece, Kyle, would that even be?
Yeah, so something that we deal with often in V-Trans is that, you know, structures like the Kingsley covered bridge, they can pose certain challenges because they serve an important transportation function. They're vital pieces of infrastructure, but they're also historically significant cultural resources. So we're always sort of trying to balance preservation of these historic bridges with whatever the modern transportation need might be. You know, I think certainly, for example, the Kingsley covered bridge when it was constructed, I'm sure the town, the builders never intended that we would still be using it today in the 21st century. So I think one of the biggest challenges for maybe this bridge specifically is that to begin with, if we started thinking about possibly constructing a new bridge adjacent to the existing covered bridge, the bridge is also within a historic district. So when we start looking at where a new bridge could possibly be located, we also are, again, are sort of balancing impacts to other cultural resources. So, you know, impacting other historic buildings, natural resources. I mean, you start to have these sort of related impacts that rehabilitation really avoids. So I think from that perspective, I think rehabilitating the existing bridge would really avoid all those additional impacts that would go along with constructing a new bridge on a similar line. But I think more importantly, there is federal legislation that essentially stipulates what we sort of can and can't do with historically significant resources. So if a bridge like the Kingsley covered bridge does have some useful economic life left in it, if it is feasible to rehabilitate the bridge, most of the federal legislation that we would review this project under, the first alternative that we really have to look at is rehabilitation. And so I think, given the condition of the bridge, as Joseph pointed out, I mean, it's really in okay shape, and it does need work, but it's not to the point where we could, I think, easily justify replacing this bridge and, either replacing or constructing a new bridge on a similar line. So there's, I think, basically the 2 components are avoiding additional impacts that would go along with the new bridge, and also sort of those strings that are tied to the federal funding for the rehabilitation project.
Yeah, and I think you have a good point there, Kyle, with the federal funds being tied to this project. So if the Kingsley Covered Bridge were to remain open and rehabilitated, and that's what project has been funded, I don't believe that we would be able to fund a new conventional bridge with those same project funds.
Okay.
Also, I know towns have a lot of bridges on their system. A lot of times we look into disinvestment options, and rather than adding more bridges to the system, we like to remove bridges from the system just because there is, there's that long-term future maintenance cost that goes along with adding bridges to the system.
She's very smart.
I think there was a question in the back. Is that it? Any other questions?
Robert, who actually owns the bridge? Does the town actually own the bridge?
Correct, but so it's that. The question has come up about ownership. Maybe you guys can word it better than I'm going to word it, as far as, because the bridge is town infrastructure, but it falls under obviously state support and state funding. So maybe you guys can explain that relationship a little bit.
Sure. So any town structure that's over 20 feet is eligible for the Town Highway Bridge Program. So in the Town Highway Bridge Program, it's an extremely competitive program. Towns have to lobby to get bridges into this program. And under that program, town bridges are eligible for 80% federal funding, 10% town funding, and 10% state funding. And as I mentioned before, that funding can go down for the town based on the project and traffic control. So it is town-owned and maintained, so if the bridge were to fail and it wasn't in the Town Highway Bridge Program, it would be on the town to replace 100% town funds.
And just so everybody's aware from our side of things, and I can certainly turn this over to the treasurer to explain as well, this is why you have a town bridge fund that you vote on every March. So what we do is we set money aside every year because we know that there's going to be a bridge project in the future. And the most recent one, I think, was the one up by Clarendon Springs Hotel, I want to say. Was that, am I right on that? That's the last one. And basically, just to give you a perspective, the 10%, well, and really, we qualified for the other share on that. So the 5% share, we just barely at that point had enough money in that fund to cover that bridge. So we've been rebuilding it since, and theoretically, when we get closer to understanding how much the town share on this will be, we will work towards making sure that we're funded by the time, we're 3 years out. So we'll make sure that we're funded by 2023 for the town share for this bridge. So if that's how that works.
And so my question would be that I'm under the understanding from someone close to the town fathers here, selectmen, that there is a surplus last year in the taxes, and instead of, not raising the school taxes, doing what they had to do with it, that they held it for this bridge. Now, I'm not going to say the exact amount of money, because probably everybody thinks I told you, but I do know that that is a fact. And it's not a rumor. So if you have that surplus now, how can you pass that burden off to taxpayers that have been there for so long? There's a certain amount that when you're retired that you live on, and it doesn't get bigger as you go.
So
if this isn't going to be done until 23, you've got a COVID issue also.
The treasurer is sitting right there. I'm a selectman, and I know that there's 3 selectmen at the front of the room. We're not sure who you've been talking to, but that information is not accurate, and I'll let the treasurer speak to that.
So you'll have to
pardon me, because I'm also taking notes tonight since the select board's administrative assistant is absent. We do have a highway fund balance that we have been carrying for emergency purposes, that certainly can be used to go towards this bridge. Anytime there's a highway fund balance, it has to go for something regarding highway, roads, bridge, it has to. So we can certainly, and the board will certainly look at that during budget time, and as we get more solid figures as to what the cost of this bridge will be. As Robert stated, every March, the voters vote on putting a certain dollar amount into this bridge fund. Currently, before taxes are collected, this September, October time, we have $108,000 in the bridge replacement fund. And there will be another $15,000 going into that bridge replacement fund this fall, as per what was voted on by the voters. We are required to, or recommended to keep a fund balance, a general fund balance of between $200,000 and $400,000 in our bank account, if you will, to get us for operating expenses for the highway, for the town hall, from July to October. So we're going into this budget year, the board had pledged to, or put out to the voters to reduce the fund balances by $155,000, which kept the tax rate to the voters this year pretty level from last year, just so that we're not raising those taxes for you folks, at least not on the municipal side. Does that...
School is different.
School, we have no control over the school. So that's the school board. Did you have any other questions for me?
I guess not, but that's in contradiction of what I know.
I'm more than
But that's okay, because they might have been mistaken, you know, so.
Yep.
Given the fact that's quite a difference of what you gave me and what they did.
Well, whatever, if you'd like to come down to the town hall and meet with me, I'm happy to show you. I did bring a balance sheet with me tonight and a budget status so far in this current budget year that we're in. I'm happy to sit down and go over them with you.
I don't think we got the books last year exactly what was done. We got a little 3 or 4 page. How come we didn't actually get a book stating everything the town has and where it goes?
So, yeah, the town auditors that are elected officials made the decision several years ago to try to cut costs, save taxpayers money, that they would send out a snapshot, and that if you would like a full copy, they do have copies at the town hall. We have a bunch of copies at the town hall from this last year still.
Were they available? Excuse me.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No,
But
they're
were they
available.
available before voting, or was it?
Yes. No, they are available before voting.
Okay, so to wrap up the bridge discussion, is there any other questions in the room regarding the bridge or comments? One more into that?
Yeah. How many years would this take for the renovations? How long would we be without a bridge?
The last question is, what's the speculation on how long the bridge would be closed in 2023?
Good question. The full construction season, so it'll be summer through late fall, almost through early winter.
Okay. Okay.
Of what year?
2023. Okay. We have no more questions on this end. And I think we're going to move on from the bridge portion to our regular meeting.
All right, thank you so much.
We'll thank the members of V-Trans for being with us tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, we'll leave Zoom open for those who may want to stay on. If you want to log out at this point, you certainly are welcome to, as we transition back to our regularly scheduled business here.
Janine might,
So Robert,
Yes. Thank you.
thanks,
And after. I didn't know that was there.
I'll see you on Friday.
Just got
Yeah, Thank you guys. Thank you. No problem. See you guys. Thank you. Bye, Heidi. Bye. Good to see you. Good to see you too.
all right, you're still on? All right, let's get our road commissioner's report going.
As I reported before, the roadside mowing is continue on the east side of town. We do have some more to finish up on the west side of town. We also, possibility we can apply for a grant for small equipment needs. And I'm not sure, there's a note there, do we need a board approval for Katie to apply for that grant?
No, I don't think, I think you can instruct her to apply for grants and then we can
Okay.
approve once we've been approved.
What it is, when I say small equipment, such as leaf blowers, blowing leaves and stuff out of the ditches, or hay shredders of that sort. Items that cost about between $4,000 and $9,000. Like rollers on a packer on the back of the grader or something like that for packing the road in. Right now, we're about finished up on West 10th Road. We've been doing excessive ditching, and regrading. We just, what's that?
West or east?
West 10th Road. And we're also regrading that as we speak. That's all I have right now. I don't know if there's any questions or comments from anybody. The cemetery in Chippenhook, with our meeting, emergency meeting we had, that project got completed and we're waiting for final inspection from A&R on that.
Any other questions for road commissioner?
Just as
It
a,
looks really nice.
yeah, that does look really nice. I know it's not on our agenda, but just as a side comment, since we're talking about the cemetery for a moment, we need to instruct, probably Katie to give a phone call to our mowers, because the front small cemetery has not been mowed since they took over. The little portion.
That, and I think we ought to have more of a conversation with them with the debris that's growing in there, small trees and stuff.
Yeah.
To not get out of hand, before it gets out of hand.
Yep.
I'd just like to say, Mr. Chairman, that a thank you to Cash and his crew for the job that they've done up there. I looked at it, I think it looks real nice.
Yeah,
It does. Looks very good.
nice work. Tell the guys, be sure they
Will do.
get the word on that. Any other questions on the road? All right, Selectmen's warrants right here, if anybody wants to look. Does anybody want to be considered a guest? Any public comments? All right, the next fun thing, fire alarm systems. Matt, did you want to?
Yeah, I gotta go to another meeting. I have two more meetings to go to this next one, so, I looked at the beds, I thought the two quotes and two beds. I like Royal's been the best, I think, the best bang for the buck, it looks like.
Yep.
A lot of detection stuff for the town office. This is the town office. Town garage, different story, but we're doing one a year, it looks like. So I would recommend just getting a rebid done for the town garage when it's time, because prices go up obviously and everything. But I think Royal's done a good bid on theirs, the town offices. And they've got a big enough panel so that if you ever wanted to expand to the upstairs, you could on that same fire alarm panel. So.
My question I had was, and I know nothing about the alarm systems or any of that stuff. It seemed to be a lot of equipment. Do we need all that equipment that is?
This is a non-required system. That means it's not required by the state to put one in. Your requirement is the insurance company's making you put it in.
Correct.
And I asked Katie to reach out to the insurance company to find out what they want. And it doesn't sound like he reached back to the town, but the email I read, it didn't look like he really cared too much. I mean, it'd be nice if he would have told you, this is what I'm looking for, for a fire alarm system. This is X, Y, and Z, but he did. He just kind of didn't want to take responsibility for it.
So I guess we have to go back to the original discussion though, as far as budgeting for this year. I mean, this was something the insurance company, I guess, threw at us, so to speak, and was not built into our budget. So the question becomes, what are we talking about doing? And I think Heidi had some suggestions last time, but where are we gonna go with this?
So one of the things that Wade came and saw Katie and I. Wade came and spoke with Katie and I a few weeks ago and brought forth the questions he had regarding the bids. And he did let us know that there is still grant money and grant funding available to us, which would take care of a substantial amount of that grant. And then the rest of the expense could be covered under town hall maintenance.
I want to, here's my thought on this, Heidi. Go this week, the rest of this week, let's try and contact leagues again. They're the people that are pushing this, and first of all, find out if we can do one building at a time, because we don't have it.
We got answers on that.
Oh,
so we can do one building at a time.
Okay.
So leagues came back and they did recommend actually doing one building at a time.
Okay.
And for instance, they said, a good place to start would be, for instance, the town hall. And then the grant is actually based on calendar year. So we would be able to apply for this grant every year and potentially get it for each of these buildings.
Okay.
And if there happens to be a year that we don't get it, then we just don't do that project that year.
Do the bidders?
Feasible to use the money that we've set aside for maintenance for the town hall this year.
Yeah.
To do that project. I know that you had initially talked about maybe painting, and I know that for aesthetic looks, of the building, that does make sense, but at the same time, if the building burns down, you're not gonna have anything to paint. So.
Makes sense to me.
So what I would recommend then, and I'll even make it a motion, is that we have Katie get on that grant application.
I can offer some more information on that too. So we have already applied for that grant, and they're setting it aside for us because we have some open, I know Katie emailed Cash today. They said that depending on the amount of open, they're not really violations, they're open, like tickets for little things. So like if you're missing a faceplate cover on an outlet, that would be like an open ticket for them. So they said if we could reduce those by 5 items, that we would qualify for the max amount of that grant.
What's on the list, Heidi?
One of them was a missing plate cover.
30-cent cover.
Yeah, exactly. So Katie emailed Cash today. Of course, he's been working all day. So, but hopefully by the end of this week, we can get with Cash. We can knock out 5 of these things, and then they literally said that they'd be happy to put in the grant as is, but then we're gonna qualify for less money. So if we can take care of it, and there's a couple of the things, like for instance, the CMV policy that you folks approved already, that's still listed as an open ticket. So she just needs to communicate with them and send them back a copy of that approved policy, and there's another one done. So I think it's very possible for us to just knock those out, get them done, and then qualify for that full grant amount to help us get this project done this year.
So to move this along, basically, we had 2 people put in for, giving us amounts. Under the recommendation of, I would say, Matt, and, he's our
Emergency coordinator.
right, for the town. Let's consider the individual that you recommended, Royal or whatever, and let's move along right now and say, okay, we're gonna do this tonight. But to let him know, in fairness, to say that we're gonna be doing one building at a time. And if he wants to back out, then, okay.
So I'll make a motion that we get open tickets taken care of and notify Royal that we are moving forward with them on the project.
Is there a second to that
I'll
motion?
second that.
Is there any further discussion?
Just one question, what kind of monitoring fee is gonna be connected with this whole thing? Someone's gonna have monitored this.
So it's for our end, the state, not for the state end this time, we have no requirements, so you don't have to monitor anything for state requirement. I find out from your insurance company how they want you to monitor it. Here,
Yeah,
I'm not putting a horse club outside here, nothing to wake up the whole neighborhood. There's a private building, It's close enough here where people will notice something going on, there's still what's going on. That's my recommendation here, but the town hall, I don't know, town garage obviously is a whole different story too, but.
Well, I can't tell you how many times I've gone down to the town garage because town garage alarm's going off.
Yeah, okay, so people hear the alarm, so I find out from the insurance company if they want it monitored. And if they don't want it monitored,
Put a horn,
they're gonna save $30 a month, that's adds up.
Yeah, I have no idea what charge rate, but I do know that you hear a lot of the buildings are monitored.
Yeah.
Well, like you say, throw a horn on the outside, people are gonna hear it.
Yeah, and so if you guys monitor it, you're gonna have to have, when you fire up, you'll have to get a Knox box in most buildings too, so they don't kick the door down.
Yeah.
Because I would almost think.
But I go back to the insurance company and find out what they want. If they want it monitored.
The fact is, that's a later discussion. Because you can change your monitoring at any time.
But just to move this along.
Yeah.
Your motion, it was seconded, we are having a brief discussion. Is there any other?
Moving on with Royal.
Right, so, all those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? So,
Oh, fire alarm's gonna go off.
I'd laugh my ass off. All right. East Street, Bump Road, Haven Hill Road, and speed limit.
We don't have anybody here representing, do we? Oh, Brian.
What you gonna do, you gonna lower it?
Yep.
That's the consensus. We got consensus from pretty much, out of all the residents contacted, I think there was only one that said no. Everybody else wanted to change.
95% of your residences in your area.
Everybody I talked to said yes,
Yes.
What about, the 2 bad areas on Bump Road, in front of, Charles's house, the old Perry house, that hill, and in front of Jim Grattan's house, same situation with the hill. It's really kind of dangerous there, especially Perry's house, because he parks on the street sometimes. And when you come going east and west, you can't see. It's pretty bad. It could be very bad.
What are you proposing for suggestion?
I don't know what kind of signs you can get.
Blind Hill or something.
Blind Hill or blind
Something like
driveway?
that. Be careful or be aware. I mean, the locals, we all know it, but out of staters don't. There's more and more mass in New York cars coming up there lately, and it could be bad.
I'll make a motion that we move forward with the ordinance change and the reposting of those roads to 25 miles an hour. And further, in my motion, add that we get some Blind Hill signs for each direction.
Blind drive?
Well, they do make blind hill signs, I think, too, that you can put.
Yeah,
Some sort of
I've seen them, I can't remember.
I'll just make my motion that it's some kind of a warning sign be added. How's that?
Plus you have to, all 5 select board members have to sign it.
Yep.
Is Wallingford doing anything with the speed limits on Haven Hill and the other end of East Street?
How's that again?
Is Wallingford doing anything with the speed
With their
limits?
They're still 35.
Yeah, but we
Should
can,
should you recommend to them to change it?
we can have a conversation with Nelson Tift. And I can do that.
I think it'd be a good idea.
I've had other conversation with another individual down there. It didn't get anywhere. So I don't know. Maybe
Well, let me
Nelson
talk to
Tift
Nelson.
one.
Hey, no, especially through that.
Yeah. But, no, we can only do what we can do.
Yeah, I know, it'd be nice to make a suggestion.
So I'll add to my motion that all select board members sign that.
Okay?
Now, second.
And just to make everybody aware that once we post this, if there's recommendations for posting and stuff, 5 different locations as well as the newspaper, then we would have 44 days,
Not 60?
no, 44 days to have people respond and then to put a petition in. But after 60, and then after the 44 days, then you have to wait a couple more. So it's a total of 60, and then it's legal. Then,
But that's to put a petition in not to do it.
Correct.
right.
Correct. It's basically a challenge time. They can challenge it.
An appeal period.
Yeah.
All right, and so Katie can figure out the dates when we post this. All right, so there's been a motion made and seconded. We've had some discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So be it.
Okay.
Have a good evening, Brian.
Brian,
Hey, Brian.
stay out of hot sun. All right, new, new business. V-Trans, Hoyler, or whatever the hell it is, Tanner and Associates and Covered Bridge, we just did that, thank you. Town officers report, Heidi, do you have anything you want to report?
No, sir. Well, just a reminder that if anyone has questions regarding the town finances, I'm happy to make appointments to discuss them with folks.
All right, Bob, do you have any concerns?
No, I'm in pretty good shape tonight.
Cash?
I'm all set, thank you.
Bob?
I would just add to the town finance piece that I think there's a misconception out there that, especially when it comes to school budgets and school, the tax rates just come down. We know now that the tax rate for the school system is going up 5 cents. The public needs to truly know and truly understand that this town, your control over that, as limited as it may be, is at the ballot box on the school budget every March. Your municipality is working very, very hard to ensure that we are keeping our spending within reason. And I think that in the time that I've been on this board, I've certainly ruffled feathers of people on the table with sometimes with how tight I have tried to keep things, and Bob has sometimes been on the receiving end of that too. And I think it just needs to be understood, please, seek to understand what's going on with finances. Try, especially understand the role that the state plays. It continues to baffle me sometimes that we get complaints about the school budget and the raising of school taxes aimed at us, when really that is completely, truly, with the separation of governmental powers, that is completely out of our hands. And I hope that folks understand that. And I would challenge them to, I guess my challenge would be, go back over the course of the last 5 years and look at how much your municipal rate has been over the span of 5 years, because, you're not gonna see a significant change on the municipal aspect, and that's what we at this table and the voters in March control. So, sorry to be on the soapbox, but I think it's just important for it to be said.
Good speech, Robert.
All right, if there's nothing else, I entertain a motion.
So moved.
The second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Done.